It was a cold evening, and the sky looked heavy with dark clouds. The streets of the city were still full of people rushing home after a long day, but everyone seemed lost in their own world. Cars honked. The sound of footsteps echoed on the wet ground, and umbrellas moved quickly from one side of the street to another. At the bus stop near the corner, there were many people waiting for the next bus, but in the middle of all the noise, there was one figure that stood out. A young girl sat on the old wooden bench of the bus stop. She was small, hardly more than a child herself, yet in her thin arms she carried a baby wrapped in a faded blanket. The girl's eyes were swollen and red from crying, and her cheeks were marked with streaks of tears. Her clothes looked worn and too big for her size, as if they had been handed down many times. Her shoes were scuffed, and her thin coat could not fight against the cold wind that blew every few minutes. She tried to tuck the blanket tighter around the baby, but her small hands trembled. The baby whimpered softly at first and then cried louder, as if feeling both hunger and the chill in the air. People noticed her, but only for a moment. A man in a suit holding his phone glanced once and then turned his head away, pretending to be busy with his screen. A woman in a red scarf whispered to the person standing next to her, shaking her head, but did nothing more. A group of teenagers laughed loudly among themselves, looking over at the girl only long enough to frown before moving further down the bus stop. No one wanted to get involved. The girl pressed the baby close to her chest, rocking gently, whispering words of comfort that only the baby could hear. Her voice was soft, broken between sobs, but full of love. She rubbed the baby's tiny hand with her thumb, trying to warm it. The sound of the bus engines could be heard from far away, but to her it felt like the whole world was moving too fast, and she was sitting frozen in the middle of it. She kept hoping someone would stop, someone would ask if she was okay, but every second that passed reminded her that people could see and still pretend to be blind. Her eyes moved from one face to another, silently begging for kindness, but everyone seemed wrapped in their own bubble. The girl felt smaller with every passing moment, almost invisible in the crowd. She thought about standing up and asking for help, but her voice caught in her throat. She was too tired, too scared, and too broken. She only knew she had to keep the baby safe. The cold wind swept through the bus stop again, and the baby began to cry harder. The girl's tears flowed once more, and she bent her head over the little bundle, whispering, "It's okay, I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." Her words shook, but her arms stayed firm around the child. She did not care about her own shivers. All she cared about was the baby. The city lights flickered on as the evening grew darker. Raindrops started falling lightly, dotting the pavement and tapping against the glass shelter of the bus stop. People pulled their coats tighter and opened umbrellas, but no one offered the girl even the smallest cover. She lifted her face, feeling the drops on her skin, and closed her eyes. For a brief second, she thought she might collapse right there on the ground. Her strength was fading, and her hope was almost gone. It was at that moment, when she felt completely forgotten, that something unexpected happened. Out of the shadows near the corner of the street, a shape moved steadily toward the bus stop. At first, people did not notice. It was just the sound of paws against the wet ground, soft but strong. Then the figure grew clearer under the light. It was a large German shepherd. Its fur was wet from the drizzle, and its sharp eyes scanned the crowd carefully. The girl noticed first. She looked up at the animal, and for the first time that evening, her sobs slowed. The dog walked closer, its steps confident but calm. The people at the bus stop turned to look now, murmuring among themselves. Some stepped back nervously, unsure if the dog was stray or dangerous. A man muttered, "Where did that come from?" while a woman pulled her handbag closer. But the dog did not look wild. Its coat, though damp, was clean. Its posture was alert but not threatening. The German shepherd stopped directly in front of the crying girl and the baby. Then, as if it understood everything without a word, it slowly sat down beside her. The girl stared at the animal, her tears glistening in the dim streetlight. The baby, still restless, turned its tiny head against her chest, but the dog's calm presence seemed to bring a strange sense of peace. The girl stretched a shaky hand and gently touched the dog's fur. It was warm beneath her cold fingers. For the first time that night, she felt that she was not completely alone. The people around whispered again. Some thought it was strange. Others frowned and stepped back even further. But no one could ignore the sight now. A thin girl, a crying baby, and a German shepherd sitting protectively beside them at the bus stop in the rain. The dog's ears twitched at every sound, and its sharp eyes moved across the faces of the people standing around, almost as if it was guarding her. The girl whispered to the dog, words no one else could hear. Her lips trembled, but her hand stayed in the dog's fur, holding on to that one bit of comfort. The German Shepherd leaned slightly closer, and though it said nothing, its presence was louder than any human voice at that moment. The bus engine rumbled closer in the distance. People adjusted their bags, ready to board. The girl, however, did not move. She held the baby close, one hand resting gently on the dog. In her heart, she felt a spark of hope. She did not know why the dog had come or how it found her, but she knew this was not just chance. Something had shifted in the silence of that lonely evening. And so, as the bus lights shone through the rain, the girl sat quietly, no longer invisible. The world had ignored her pain, but a silent guardian had appeared from the shadows, and nothing would ever feel quite the same again. The bus roared past in the distance, its bright headlights cutting through the misty evening air. People at the stop stirred, readying themselves to climb aboard. Some looked at their watches, others shuffled impatiently. Yet the young girl with the baby did not move. Her gaze was fixed on the German Shepherd that had come out of nowhere, and now sat firmly by her side. The animal's body was tense but calm, its ears twitching at every passing sound, its eyes sharp and watchful like a silent guardian. The girl felt something she hadn't felt in hours, maybe even days. Safety. Her tiny fingers tightened around the dog's thick fur as she whispered softly to the baby, who had stopped wailing as if sensing the protective presence nearby. The baby let out small whimpers, but the loud cries had faded. It was as if the child also believed the dog was not just an animal, but a shield against the cold, the fear, and the loneliness pressing in from every direction. Some of the people at the bus stop reacted nervously. A man with a briefcase stepped back, muttering that the dog looked dangerous. A woman clutched her bag tighter and shook her head in disapproval. One older man, sitting near the corner, cleared his throat as if about to say something but thought better of it and stayed quiet. Most people chose to ignore the scene completely, pretending it was not their concern, the same way they had ignored the crying girl just moments before. But the German Shepherd did not ignore her. Every time someone walked too close with curious eyes, the dog let out a low growl, not aggressive but enough to warn them to keep their distance. Its body leaned slightly toward the girl, as if declaring that this fragile child and the baby in her arms were under its protection. The girl, who had been trembling from both the cold and her fear, felt a strange comfort each time the dog growled. She wasn't used to anyone standing up for her, but this animal was doing just that without hesitation. The drizzle turned heavier, tapping against the glass roof of the bus stop. The crowd rushed onto the bus as soon as it stopped, umbrellas bumping against one another. A few glanced back at the strange sight of the girl and her silent guardian, but no one paused to ask questions. Within minutes, the bus pulled away, leaving the stop quieter and emptier. The girl, the baby, and the German Shepherd remained where they were, a small circle of warmth in the middle of the cold night. The girl lowered her head toward the dog and whispered, "Why are you here? Did you come for me?" Her voice was barely audible, but the dog's ears moved as if it understood. The baby made a soft sound, almost like a sigh, and tucked its little face deeper into the blanket. The dog lay down now, resting its head near the girl's worn-out shoes, but its eyes never stopped scanning the surroundings. Every movement of a stranger passing by, every rustle of the leaves, every sound of the city, it noticed everything. Another bus passed by later, and again people came and went. Some pointed at the girl with the baby and the dog, whispering to each other, but no one dared approach. The German Shepherd's presence made them unsure. Was it safe? Was the dog trained? Why did it choose to stay with her? They had questions, but not enough courage to find answers. The girl rubbed the baby's back gently. Her lips trembled, but there was a softness in her eyes now that hadn't been there before. She looked at the German Shepherd with gratitude she couldn't put into words. This animal, without speaking, had done what none of the grown people around her had done. It had noticed her pain, come closer, and stayed. Hours felt like minutes to the girl because she was no longer completely alone. The sound of the rain was no longer frightening, and the cold seemed less sharp because the dog's large body gave her a sense of warmth. The baby stirred restlessly, and the girl adjusted the blanket again, humming softly to soothe him. The German Shepherd raised its head and watched as if making sure both child and infant were safe. A few curious souls passed by and tried to peek closer. One young man, with his headphones around his neck, bent slightly toward the baby out of curiosity. Immediately, the German Shepherd lifted itself, its eyes narrowing, and a low growl rumbled in its chest. The young man jumped back, startled, muttered something under his breath, and hurried away. The girl felt her heart swell at that moment. She smiled faintly through her tears, stroking the dog's head. "You're protecting us," she whispered. The night grew darker and the streetlights flickered. The rush of people became slower as the city quieted. The bus stop was emptier now, with only a few stragglers passing by every now and then. The girl's eyes were heavy, but she kept herself awake for the baby's sake. The German Shepherd sat upright once more, never fully relaxing, never fully asleep. It was as if the dog had decided that watching over her was its duty. For the first time that day, the girl felt her heart calm a little. She thought about all the faces that had ignored her, all the people who had chosen to look away. It had hurt more than the cold wind or the hunger gnawing at her stomach. But now beside her sat a creature that had not looked away. It had come straight to her and stayed, without judgment, without fear. The baby yawned softly and the girl kissed his forehead. "We're not alone anymore," she murmured. The German Shepherd raised its head at the sound of her voice, almost as though it agreed. Cars continued to rush past the wet road, their headlights flashing briefly across the bus stop. The city around them carried on as usual, but inside the small shelter of glass and metal, something powerful had formed. A bond between a broken girl, a fragile baby, and a dog with a loyal heart. The girl no longer felt invisible. She no longer felt like no one cared, because right beside her a guardian had appeared, one that spoke not with words but with actions, and that made all the difference. The night grew heavier, and the drizzle slowly turned into a steady rain. The girl pulled the baby closer, trying to cover him with the thin blanket she had, but the fabric was already damp. She sniffled, brushing her wet hair away from her face while her eyes glanced at the German Shepherd lying faithfully beside her. The dog's body was wet too, but it didn't seem to care. Its sharp eyes scanned the street and its ears moved with every little sound. The girl had no idea why the animal had chosen her, but she knew it was the only reason she still had courage to stay seated on that bench. Minutes passed, then hours. People came and went. Some buses stopped, but she never climbed aboard. She wasn't sure where she could go. She had nowhere safe to take her baby brother. Each time a bus opened its doors, she would glance at the people getting on, then look back down at the baby, too afraid to stand. The German Shepherd never moved far, never let her out of its sight. From the other side of the bus stop, a middle-aged woman had been watching. She wore a long coat, and her hair was tucked neatly under a wool hat. Unlike the others who had ignored or whispered about the girl, this woman's eyes lingered on her with quiet concern. She noticed the way the girl's lips trembled, the way her thin arms tried to shield the baby, and the way she leaned toward the dog as though it was her only friend in the world. The woman felt her chest tighten with sympathy. She hesitated at first, unsure if she should interfere, but the more she watched, the harder it became to turn away. Finally, she took a slow step forward. The German Shepherd immediately lifted its head. Its body tensed and a low sound rumbled in its throat. The woman froze, realizing the dog was guarding the girl. She raised her hands slightly, showing she meant no harm. Her voice was gentle when she spoke. "It's all right, I won't hurt you," she said, her eyes moving between the dog and the girl. The girl stiffened, clutching the baby tighter. She lowered her head, hiding her face behind the damp strands of her hair. She didn't speak. She only rocked the baby nervously. The German Shepherd moved closer to her, as if to assure her it wouldn't let anyone harm her. The woman crouched slowly, keeping a little distance so she didn't frighten them further. "I've been watching for some time," she said softly. "You look cold. The baby looks cold too. Here, take this." She gently unwrapped a scarf from around her neck, a thick woolen scarf that still carried warmth, and extended it toward the girl. For a long moment, the girl did not react. Her eyes flicked to the scarf and then back to the woman's face. Her lips parted, but no words came. The German Shepherd's eyes narrowed, watching every move. The woman laid the scarf on the empty part of the bench and said, "You don't have to take it if you don't want to, but it might help him stay warm." The girl blinked, her heart aching at the kindness she wasn't used to. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she reached out and picked up the scarf. She wrapped it gently around the baby's tiny body, tucking it under the blanket to block the cold air. The baby stirred, then grew quiet, comforted by the sudden warmth. The girl looked down at him with tears in her eyes. The woman smiled softly. "See? He likes it." She then lowered her voice and added, "What's his name?" The girl hesitated. She wanted to stay silent, but something about the woman's tone felt different. It wasn't harsh or accusing. It was calm and patient. Finally, she whispered, "Daniel." The woman nodded. "That's a beautiful name." She studied the girl's face. "And you? What's your name?" The girl's voice was barely a whisper. "Anna. Anna," the woman repeated as though to remember it. "I'm glad to meet you, Anna. My name is Mrs. Turner." The German Shepherd lowered its head slightly but kept its eyes on Mrs. Turner. It seemed to sense that she wasn't a threat. The girl stroked the dog's fur nervously, as though asking it silently to stay calm. Mrs. Turner took a careful breath and asked gently, "Why are you here all alone, Anna? Where are your parents?" Anna's eyes filled with tears again. She shook her head quickly, holding Daniel tighter. "I can't go back," she whispered. "I have to protect him." Mrs. Turner's heart sank. She didn't push for details right away, but she nodded as if she understood.
"All right."
"You don't have to tell me everything right now, but I can see you're trying very hard to take care of him." The girl looked down, tears dripping on the baby's blanket.
"No one listens," she whispered.
"No one cares, but he's all I have." The German Shepherd shifted, pressing closer to Anna's legs. Mrs. Turner noticed the way Anna's thin shoulders shook and realized how much fear she carried inside her small body. She wanted to reach out, but she stayed still, knowing any sudden move might frighten the girl away. "Anna," Mrs. Turner said softly, "you're very brave. Not many your age could do what you're doing. And this dog," she glanced at the German Shepherd, "he seems to know you need someone. Isn't that right?" Anna finally lifted her gaze. Her tear-streaked face looked fragile, but in her eyes there was a spark of trust beginning to grow. She nodded faintly. "He came to us," she whispered. "He sat here." Like he knew, Mrs. Turner smiled warmly. "Sometimes animals understand what people ignore." The baby stirred again and Anna rocked him gently, humming under her breath. Mrs. Turner watched with admiration. This young girl, broken and lost, still carried so much love for her brother. It was both heartbreaking and inspiring. The rain continued to fall outside, the street glistening under the lights. Cars rushed past, but in the small circle of the bus stop, time seemed to slow. A connection had formed between the woman, the girl, and the dog. For the first time in a long while, Anna felt that maybe someone cared enough to notice her pain. The German Shepherd let out a small huff of breath and lay its head down again. Still alert, but calmer now, Anna stroked its ear gently and whispered, "Thank you." She wasn't sure if she was thanking the dog, Mrs. Turner, or both. Maybe it was for all three, the dog, the woman, and the moment of kindness that had reached her heart. And so in the quiet of the rainy night, while buses came and went and the city continued its busy rhythm, a frightened girl, a fragile baby, and a loyal dog found the courage to let one more person into their circle. What had started as silence and fear began to change into something else, something closer to hope. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, and the streets of the city reflected the yellow glow of the streetlights. Anna held Daniel close, feeling the warmth of the scarf Mrs. Turner had given them. The German Shepherd stayed beside her, its presence steady and comforting. For the first time since she had left home, Anna felt a small spark of safety, but she knew this moment of calm could not last forever. She had to find a place for them both, somewhere they could be truly safe. Mrs. Turner noticed the unease in Anna's eyes. She had seen so many frightened children, but there was something different about Anna. She was cautious yet determined. Mrs. Turner wanted to help, but she also knew that rushing Anna could frighten her. She needed to earn her trust. "Anna," she said softly, "we can find a warm place for you and Daniel tonight. Do you trust me?" Anna's hands trembled as she held her baby brother. She hesitated, but the gentle voice and kind eyes of Mrs. Turner, along with the protective presence of the dog, gave her courage. Slowly she nodded. I think so," she whispered. Mrs. Turner smiled and gestured for Anna to follow her to the edge of the sidewalk. The German Shepherd stood, stretching its legs, and then walked beside Anna, guiding her steps as if it understood the path they needed to take. People walking by glanced at the small group, a young girl clutching a baby, a woman with kind eyes, and a large dog, but no one dared intervene. The aura of protection around them was clear. Mrs. Turner led Anna and the baby to her car parked nearby. She unlocked the door, and the warm heat from the engine filled the air, mixing with the faint smell of wet pavement. Anna stepped inside carefully, keeping Daniel close. The dog hopped in as well, finding a spot where it could stay alert but comfortable. For the first time, Anna felt that the cold, wet streets and the judgmental eyes of strangers were behind them. As the car moved through the city, Mrs. Turner asked gently, "Can you tell me what happened, Anna? How did you end up here with Daniel?" Anna's small hands gripped the blanket tightly. She swallowed, trying to find the words. I ran away. Mom and Dad, they fight a lot. I didn't want Daniel to hear it. I wanted to protect him, but I didn't know where to go. No one listens. No one cares. And then, the dog. He came. Mrs. Turner's heart ached. She reached over and gave Anna's hand a reassuring squeeze. You've been very brave, Anna. Very brave indeed. And Daniel is lucky to have you. That dog, he knew you needed help. Sometimes animals can see things that people miss. The German shepherd rested its head on the seat, ears perked, alert but calm. Anna glanced at it and whispered, "Thank you for finding me." She wasn't sure if she meant the dog, Mrs. Turner, or both. But inside her heart, she knew that without that guardian, she and Daniel might still be standing at the cold bus stop, invisible to the world. They drove a few blocks to a small neighborhood shelter that Mrs. Turner trusted. It was a place that helped children in need, providing warmth, food, and safety without judgment. She parked outside and stepped out first, opening the door for Anna. The girl hesitated, glancing back at the streets they had left behind. Then, seeing the dog sitting calmly by her side, she felt courage swell inside her. Slowly, she stepped out with Daniel in her arms. Inside, the shelter was warm and quiet. A volunteer greeted them with a smile, immediately understanding the situation. "You're safe here," the woman said. "Let's get you warm and dry." Anna looked around, amazed at the small beds, warm blankets, and the smell of food being prepared. For the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel alone. The volunteers helped Anna clean Daniel up and gave them both dry clothes. They set a small cot for the baby and a warm blanket for Anna. The German shepherd lay down nearby, still alert, but clearly sensing the girl's relief. Anna hugged the dog's neck gently, whispering again, "Thank you. You saved us." Mrs. Turner stayed with them for a while, speaking softly to Anna about what would happen next. Social workers would ensure that both children were safe, that Anna would receive the care and support she needed, and that Daniel would be protected. Anna listened carefully, holding the baby close, trying to process everything. She felt hope growing where there had been only fear. Later, as the night grew quieter, Anna sat on her small cot with Daniel resting against her chest. The German shepherd lay at her feet, eyes occasionally glancing toward the door. The girl realized how much had changed in just a few hours. People had ignored her, overlooked her pain, and left her alone at the bus stop. But then a stranger, a woman and a dog, had stepped in. They had shown her that not all the world was cold and uncaring. She thought about the people who had walked by that evening without stopping, the ones who whispered and looked away. She didn't feel anger toward them anymore. Instead, she understood something important. Sometimes kindness comes from unexpected places. Sometimes the help you need doesn't arrive in the form you expect. For Anna, it came on 4 strong legs with sharp, intelligent eyes. The German shepherd lifted its head, letting out a soft huff, and Anna reached down to stroke it one more time. "You're amazing," she whispered, feeling a deep connection she could not explain. The dog's tail wagged slightly, and it rested its head back down. It had done its job. It had guided her to safety, offered protection, and stayed beside her when no one else would. Mrs. Turner watched quietly from a nearby chair, feeling proud of the girl. She had seen Anna's courage, her love for her brother, and her quiet determination. The woman knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but now Anna and Daniel were in safe hands. They had shelter, care, and the beginning of hope, and, surprisingly, a loyal guardian who had come into their lives in the most unexpected way. As Anna drifted into a light sleep, Daniel cuddled against her chest. She felt something she had not felt in a long time. Peace. The shelter was warm, the food smelled inviting, and the world outside seemed distant. The German shepherd lay beside them, eyes half closed but alert, ready to act if danger ever returned. Anna whispered softly, almost to herself, "We made it. We're safe now." The night passed quietly. For the first time in many weeks, Anna's small heart felt relief. She thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought the dog to her side, and how a single act of kindness, whether from an animal or a stranger, could change everything. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew one thing clearly. She and Daniel were no longer alone, and she would never forget the four-legged guardian who had found them when the world had turned away. Morning light filtered softly through the shelter's small windows, painting the room with a warm glow. Anna stirred slowly, her hand still resting on Daniel's back as he slept peacefully beside her. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, she had slept without fear. The German shepherd lay at the foot of their cot, its head resting on its paws, but its eyes followed every movement, alert and protective as always. The girl felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Somehow, despite the dangers and cold nights she had faced, she and Daniel were safe. Breakfast was simple but warm. Volunteers brought porridge, bread, and fruit, placing it carefully on a small table where Anna and the baby could eat. Anna nibbled slowly, unsure how to feel about the sudden change in her life. She glanced at the dog, who sat quietly beside her watching. It had been a long night of guarding, and though it seemed calm now, Anna knew it had stayed awake to keep them safe. She whispered softly, "You're amazing, you really are." The dog's ears twitched and it gave a small huff as though acknowledging her words. Mrs. Turner returned to the shelter that morning. She had spent the night checking that Anna and Daniel were comfortable, speaking quietly with the staff and making sure that the girl would feel welcomed rather than frightened. She knelt beside Anna, her smile gentle. "Good morning, Anna. How are you feeling?" Anna hesitated. The calm morning made her feel safe, but the reality of what had happened still weighed on her heart. I'm okay," she said softly. "I didn't think anyone would care." Mrs. Turner reached out, taking Anna's small hand in hers. "Anna, there are people who care. Sometimes it takes finding the right ones, and sometimes you meet people or animals who notice when others don't." Her eyes flicked to the German shepherd sitting alert nearby. "Like your guardian here," Anna smiled faintly. She ran a hand over the dog's fur, remembering how it had appeared that rainy night. Its presence steady and unafraid. She thought about how it had protected her and Daniel when everyone else had ignored them. The memory filled her with a strange warmth. "He saved us," she whispered. "I don't know what we would have done without him." The day slowly unfolded. Volunteers helped Anna clean up and dress Daniel in fresh clothes, warm and comfortable. The shelter staff made sure they had a safe place to sleep and a blanket for the dog to rest on. Mrs. Turner stayed nearby, quietly observing and offering support, letting Anna know that she didn't have to face everything alone. Then, a phone call came from the German shepherd's handler. A man arrived within the hour, introducing himself gently as the dog's trainer. "I think we have the right dog," he said, smiling. "He's trained to find people in trouble. Seems he found you." Anna's eyes widened. He was looking for me?" The man nodded. "Not exactly. He's trained to notice distress. He sensed you needed help and stayed with you. That's his job in a way, but he chooses who to help. He stayed because he felt you were in danger." Tears filled Anna's eyes again, but this time they were not only from fear, they were from gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered to the man and then looked at the dog, her heart swelling. "Thank you for finding us, for protecting us." The dog wagged its tail gently, resting its head back down as if to say it had done what it was meant to do. Mrs. Turner knelt beside Anna again. "You see, sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. The world may seem uncaring at first, but there are those who notice and act." She looked around the shelter and added, "And sometimes even animals can teach us that kindness exists." Anna hugged Daniel tightly, feeling the baby's warmth against her chest. She thought about the long night on the bus stop, the cold wind, the people who had ignored them, and the sudden arrival of her four-legged guardian. She realized that hope could arrive in the most unexpected forms, even when it seemed like all doors were closed. The volunteers guided Anna and Daniel through the next steps. They would ensure the children were safe, fed, and looked after. Social services would help them with housing and care, but Anna felt confident for the first time that she was not alone. She had allies now, and most importantly, she had a loyal friend in the German Shepherd. The day passed quietly but with purpose. Anna helped Daniel sit for small activities, smiled as he reached for toys, and even laughed softly at his small, happy movements. The dog stayed close, resting near the children but always ready to respond. Anna noticed how it watched her, understanding her moods, and she felt a connection she had never felt with another living being. It was as though the dog understood the weight she carried and chose to stay with her anyway. By evening, Mrs. Turner returned again, this time to offer reassurance. "Anna, you've been so brave," she said. "You've protected Daniel and now you've let people help you. That takes strength. You are not alone anymore. You are seen and you are cared for." Anna nodded, hugging the baby and feeling the weight of relief settle on her shoulders. She glanced at the German Shepherd, lying with its head on its paws. It had given her courage, protection, and hope. "We made it," she whispered to Daniel and the dog alike. "We're safe now." As night fell, Anna tucked Daniel into his small cot, covering him with a warm blanket. The dog curled up beside her, resting its head against the edge of the cot. The girl smiled faintly, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. She realized that the world, while sometimes cruel and uncaring, still held moments of kindness that could change lives. Anna whispered to the dog one last time that night. "You came when no one else did. You saved us." The dog huffed softly, a gentle sound of acknowledgement. In that quiet moment, the girl knew she would never forget the loyalty, courage, and love shown to her that night by a guardian she had never expected to find. For the first time, she felt a future that could be bright. She knew the road ahead would have challenges, but she had hope, courage, and friends, both human and animal, to guide her. The night no longer felt lonely, the world no longer seemed uncaring, and Anna understood that sometimes salvation comes in 4 strong legs, sharp eyes, and a heart full of devotion. And so the girl, the baby, and the German Shepherd stayed together, resting at last, safe and watched over, ready to face tomorrow with hope in their hearts and the warmth of a guardian that would never leave their side.